Claudius II Gothicus has the makings of another Gallienus, and had, in fact, long served as the emperor's second-in-command. But his reign proved to be short, and though Spain was reincorporated into the empire, his policies led to Zenobia and the Palmyrene Empire declaring independence from Rome. Claudius is notable, perhaps, as one of the very few emperors who didn't die a violent death during the 3rd century, as he contracted the Cyprian plague that had claimed the life of the short-lived Emperor Hostilian before him. The fact that Claudius supposedly was a relative or ancestor of Constantine the Great has forced historians to question the reliability of the sources, as most of the sources seem to bend over backwards to represent a eulogy of his life and career. However, we do know that he was one of Gallienus's most trusted generals. Another Claudius. Marcus Aurelius Valerius Claudius is now commonly referred to as Claudius II, so as not to confuse him with the Julio-Claudian emperor. He was born in Illyricum on the 10th of May, 214. It's clear that Gallienus had trusted Claudius throughout his reign, but how he arrived at the emperor's side is uncertain. Perhaps he was part of Valerian's inner circle because he replaced Crinitus when Valerian arrived on the Danube in 256. He might have been appointed dux of the entire Danubian frontier at the time, but was later sent to reinforce Gallienus in Gaul when the Franks and Alemanni invaded. From that point onward, he appears at Gallienus' side throughout the remainder of the emperor's reign as one of his most trusted generals. Gallienus was assassinated outside Mediolanum in September of 268, and as he lay dying, he, allegedly, formally appointed Claudius as his successor, and the army quickly consented and proclaimed Claudius emperor. The Senate ratified the army's choice and conferred the name Augustus on him. They were pleased to hear that Gallienus, who many of them despised, was dead. The accounts differ, but the outcome is the same. The siege of Mediolanum was lifted, and Aureolus was killed. Gallienus' supporters were removed or killed in the capital, and his last surviving son was also killed at this time, apparently to the dismay of Claudius, who intervened, asking for the senators to show restraint against Gallienus' supporters. The new emperor marched to Rome to secure his position and gain the support of the Senate. Throughout his reign, he seems to have enjoyed cordial relations with the Senate. Gallienus had been reviled by that body as he had reduced their power significantly by abolishing their right to command armies and govern provinces. The Senate wanted to remove Gallienus from history by destroying his statues and removing his name from public records. Claudius, however, insisted that the emperor should be deified. Though the Senate might have disapproved, Claudius would neither change nor reverse any of Gallienus' policies. On the throne. The empire Claudius inherited was still engulfed in chaos. Gaul, Britain, and Spain had seceded from the empire 8 years earlier, and Palmyra had enjoyed hegemony in the east following the capture of Valerian, acting more or less independently, though still paying lip service to Rome. The Goths were still ravaging the Balkans, now desperate and hungry as their mass migration had failed. In 269, he dispatched Aurelian, the future emperor, to the Balkans to deal with the Gothic invasion, effectively replacing Gallienus' chosen general, Marcianus. But if we assume that Aurelian and Claudius had been part of the conspiracy against Gallienus, replacing Macrianus was a necessary precautionary move on the part of Claudius. Gallienus' prefect of Egypt, Tenagio Probus, was confirmed in his position and ordered to clear the eastern Mediterranean from pirate activity. Heraclianus was sent to re-establish Roman authority in the east by conducting a war against Sassanid Persia and to bring the Palmyrene queen Zenobia to heel. And it seems that he was partially successful, as Claudius is given the title of Parthicus Maximus. Zenobia's husband, Odenathus, had been tolerated as he paid lip service to Rome and nominally acted on the behalf of Gallienus. Zenobia, however, showed more independence, and it appears that she established her own peace treaty with Persia to secure the lucrative trade coming from the east. Early on in 270, relations between Rome and Palmyra broke down as Zenobia essentially declared independence and conquered Syria all the way down to the border with Egypt, and soon southern Anatolia was also firmly under Palmyrene's influence. Meanwhile, in Egypt, Probus had dealt with the pirate activity, but was soon faced with a far greater threat, as most of the tribes in Roman North Africa revolted, which resulted in a massive campaign, leaving Egypt wide open, a fact Zenobia soon exploited. With a new emperor and much of the army sent to Thrace to fight the Goths, Italy was vulnerable, a fact that the Alemanni and the Juthungi exploited as they invaded the peninsula in 269. These tribes had been somewhat pacified after their defeats by Gallienus, who had established treaties with the tribes. Three likely causes for their renewed hostility were that with Gallienus murdered, they considered their treaties null and void, and Gallienus' second wife, Pippa, was the daughter of, perhaps, the Juthungi tribe. She would have been killed along with her husband. This required retribution, but I believe the likeliest cause is that Claudius stopped paying the subsidies Gallienus had agreed upon. Either way, the tribes were poised to invade Italy. Claudius quickly mustered his troops, though the main army would have likely joined Aurelian in the Balkans. Claudius probably had the elite cavalry corps that Gallienus had established as he moved north to prevent the barbarians from crossing the Alps. He checked their incursion near Lake Garda, close to Verona. Claudius took the title Germanicus Maximus following his victory. Spain reclaimed. Meanwhile, the Gallic Empire in the west was facing its own problems. Postumus had suffered a number of defeats at the hands of Gallienus, which had diminished his prestige considerably, leaving the throne ripe for usurpation. In fact, Postumus was in a civil war against Laelianus in 269. Claudius sent Julius Placidianus to lead a force into southern Gaul, which restored the territory east of the River Rhone back to Rome. Claudius famously said that usurpers were a problem for him personally, but foreign invasions were a problem for the state, and he decided to focus on the foreign threat before dealing with Postumus. The Franks had invaded the empire in 260, at a time when Gallienus was occupied by an invasion of Italy, which left Gaul, Spain, and Britain to fend for themselves, which effectively led to their secession from the empire and the creation of Postumus's Gallic Empire. Some of these Frankish warbands had established themselves in Spain, creating a pirate state, a problem Postumus was never able to deal with. As a result, the Spanish provinces realized Postumus's weakness and decided to come back into the fold and declared their loyalty to Claudius and Rome. Where Claudius went after his victory at Lake Garda is unknown, but it's probable that he was to remain in Italy and conduct the war against the Alemanni, and that he planned to send his brother Quintillus with reinforcements to Aurelian in the Balkans, but changed his mind at the last minute, because he feared that Aurelian would proclaim himself emperor if given command of both armies. So he marched into the Balkans himself and left the war in Italy to his brother. Some also believe that Aurelian was purposefully not engaging the Goths in a decisive battle, as he wanted to maintain his army for his planned usurpation, and considering his military record, it does lend credence to that idea. He would prove to be one of Rome's most brilliant commanders. The Gothic invasion had already been defeated at the Battle of Naissus during Gallienus' reign, so Aurelian's apparent failure to mop up the remaining Goths is suspicious. But as the Goths were contained in the Haemus Mountains and slowly starving, this might have been the sensible thing to do. Quintillus. While marching eastward, Claudius contracted the Cyprian plague and died soon after. In Sirmium, Claudius's brother Quintillus was proclaimed emperor by Claudius's soldiers, and he was quickly recognized by the Senate. But the forces under Aurelian's command refused to recognize the new emperor and declared their own commander emperor to challenge his claim. Quintillus ruled for only a few months, and not much has survived about his reign. It is even believed that he never had the chance to enter Rome. The circumstances surrounding Quintillus's death are obscure. The largely unreliable Historia Augusta states that Quintillus was a severe military commander, and for this he was killed by his own men. Some historians say he died in a battle against Aurelian, and still others say he killed himself by cutting his vein. But what is known is that following his death, Aurelian succeeded him on the throne. Claudius's reign proved to be short, and he achieved very little as emperor. Spain was reincorporated into the empire, but likely more due to the failure of Postumus and not that of Claudius's success. His tactless handling of Zenobia seems to have caused her open rebellion. Claudius had proven himself an excellent general and cavalry commander during Gallienus's reign. He was loved by the soldiers and officers alike. He did defeat the Alemanni and Juthungi invasion of Italy, and if he didn't contract the plague, he might have proven just as capable as Gallienus or Aurelian. His reign was simply too short for us to judge his real merit as emperor.
Hello, and thanks for watching the video. My name is John, and I'll be narrating the SPQR Historians videos from now on. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoy the content we make here on the channel. It really helps us grow and reach more people. And make sure to watch our previous video on Gallienus if you haven't seen it. The next video in this series will be on Aurelian, the Restituta Orbis.